Welcome guys to My Mechanical Dreams episode 1. This web series will cover the full restoration of my 81 Toyota Corolla Wagon. This is a car that I picked up in 2012. It's been sitting around a while due to the competition drift car that I have here. This takes up all of my time and focus, and that's why I haven't had the time or economy to get this car started properly. The current situation now with the coronavirus and all of that stuff makes it a pretty good time to start a project, and I've been waiting for a long time, so it feels good to finally take the first steps of getting this car back on the road. The whole car idea of this is to get something back on the streets again, because I don't know how many years it was ago that I had a proper street car, but I really missed that vibe of having the street crew, do some driving on the small country roads with friends, and just the overall vibe. The whole vibe about that was actually the thing that got me so passionate about cars and also drifting. So the whole plan with this is to get my mechanical dream fulfilled. I want something that's high revving, that's fun to drive, looks good, and has all the elements that I like in cars. So I thought that to kick off this series, I'm going to show you a little bit about the background of the car, why I got it, where I got it, and also what modification has been done to it so far. And also, of course, show off a little bit about what's the plan for this rebuild, because it's going to be quite a big rebuild, but I think there's some major key components there that will make this car so much better than it is today. So I'm super stoked about the project. I have some partners on board already, but I think this is going to be a good one. I hope you're excited too, and let's get rolling on part 1. So the whole story about the KE70 Wagon actually started somewhere about 2009, I think. A friend of mine called Dubbrolle, or Roland Zetterström, he is a car builder that I look up to very much. He's super talented on nailing all of his builds when it comes to style and fitment and all of that good stuff. I really look up to his work, and I saw that he had built this car. He made it patina and made the overall looks and fitment that it has today. I was really intrigued about the car. I really love the style, and I saw him put it up for sale around 2010, I think. At that time I was building my 190, so I couldn't afford to buy it when he sold it, but around 2 years later I saw it pop up again for sale, and I had to take the chance. So I got the money, went up and bought the car, and I was really stoked about it. From the really get-go of the car, I was already convinced that I was going to do a big project about it. But I had so much big plans, and I was building the 190 at the same time and all of that stuff. So I decided I'd just do some minor modifications for the time being, and then do the build later on. So I think it was driven like 2 or 3 years with some modifications in between. But when I broke the clutch wire, actually, I decided, oh, now it's the time to put it away and start the project. But at that time, we actually bought the CLK, and the whole journey with that started. And then I was all out of money and time for the next 4 or 5 years, or until today, because I'm still poor. But that's the story, I guess. So the plan of building it, as I said, has been for all of the time I own the car, and it's finally time. So let's go over a bit of what has been done to the car during the time I owned it, and also when Roland owned it. So let's get started on checking out all of that details. Well, the first thing that pops, of course, is the color. This is a stock Toyota orange color. I really dig it, but as you can see, the paint has been sanded down by Dubbrolle. So it looks patina and looks a little bit rough, and yeah, makes an overall better feel of the old school style that the build is. The car overall is in pretty decent shape. It looks really rough, like you can see in the back. The fenders are really rusted, but that's kind of the only really bad rust of the whole car. The roof has some spots here and there from the rocks from the road and stuff like that, but otherwise the chassis or the body itself is in really good condition. So we actually have a proof of it. We removed all of the sound denting in the back, and you can see, look at how clean the sheet metal is underneath. So that's a good sign, because I always want a good solid starting point. I don't like rust that much, so try to skip it if I can. Yeah, otherwise it's a 5-door, of course. It's a wagon, so it's a 4-seater. It's actually only registered for 3 passengers except the driver, so it's no 5-seater inside as the standard wagons are. When it comes to outside modifications, it's currently sitting on 15x8 XXR rims. They're 15x8 ET offset 0 and stock flares, but we only rolled them a bit to fit the new front end, because right now it's sitting on an S13 front end, but we'll check more on that soon. Underneath the bonnet, it's a stock 4KC engine. I think it produces around 65 horsepower. It did at least 1981, but doesn't do it anymore. So it's really slow engine, but still has a great mechanical feel. The gearbox shifts gorgeously, and yeah, I like the overall feel of the car. So the main things that has been done to the suspension is that I mounted a S13 lower control arm, a spindle, and also a coilover for an S13. So that's the main modifications. So you can see it's fully adjusted inwards to get the camber. That's because the lower control arms, I think they're 1 centimeter wider or 2, so we get a lot more camber, but that makes the wheels fit a bit better in my opinion. In the rear, it's actually a stock solid axle, but it's been flipped over and put on top of the springs, leaf springs, instead of underneath. So it's actually completely stiff. If you can see here, there's no suspension whatsoever. So it's that's one of the main reasons I'm doing a big rebuild, because when you hit a puddle or a pothole or something, yeah, your kidneys fall out of the stomach. Internally, the car is fitted with some old Corvette C4 seats. Pretty dope, a little bit of a retro feel to it. Then we have some old Momo wheel, also a bit of a retro vibe to it. You can see the scratches and stuff. It's been used for a long while, but I like it. It fits the style to the car pretty much. Then you can see we have a stock dash. Some modification has been done by the middle owner between me and Roland. Unfortunately, someone decided on building a sound system in the car and destroying these lovely side panels. So if someone has front side panels for a KE70, I would really love to get my hands on 2 black ones again. That's pretty much it for the stock interior. It's stock headliner and all of that stuff. And stock seats in the back. So that's overall the modifications that's been done right now. So the car is pretty simple. It's really fun to drive, and yeah, I love it so much. One of the small details I forgot to mention was that I mounted these side mirror fender mirrors, because I think it suits the style a bit better from the 80s. So that's about it for how the car works right now. So let's move over and check what's going to be done to the car. Well, when it comes to the rebuild, we have a lot of stuff that we want to do to the car. Of course, one of the main things of the car is that we will swap the engine. We will swap to another 4-cylinder, and we're also going to change to a new gearbox. And then it's going to be a new prop shaft and all of that stuff. So it's going to be a lot of modifications here. We're going to do EFI swap instead of doing a carburetor and all of that. So we're going to clean up the engine bay, remove all of the unnecessary stuff and make it really clean, because I want it shaved and looking as crystal clear as possible. So some of you already know what swap we're doing, but if you head over to our Instagram or Facebook, you will find out yourself, because we're not going to release it here until next episode. So suspension wise, we're going to change the suspension of the car. We're going to make a better control arm on this car. Maybe we're going to shorten it a bit to reduce the camber a little bit, because now we're forced to run this much camber to fit it. So we're going to change the coilovers and all of that stuff. Also change the calipers and the brake rotors to make it legal in Sweden, because it's going to be a street registered car. So it has to be able to take the power we're putting into it. Then, as I told you, the rear axle is going to be probably the biggest change of the car. We're going for a split axle with subframe rear end instead. This is going to be a Nissan S200 200SX S13 rear end, the European one. So this is going to be a huge rebuild, because it's a solid axle right now. So we're going to have to build pickup points for the subframe. And we're also going to have to make the subframe 10 centimeters more narrow to fit it inside the body in a good way. So that's probably the biggest thing. Of course, it's going to be a new exhaust, new wiring system and all of that stuff. But that's more of the small details. Main bodywork is going to be kind of keep it stock. We're going to do wider fender flares in steel. So if you can see, we're going to widen maybe 3 centimeters in the rear. This is probably going to be made by widening the door a bit, because it's such a narrow space and we want to raise the fender flare a bit. And also in the front, we're going to raise the fender flare a bit and widen it about 3 centimeters as well. We want to keep it kind of the stock form, but higher up, so we kind of get the car lower to the ground. We're going to be running 15-inch to fit the type of brakes I want as well, so that's why we need to raise it in the fender flares to get it a bit more low, because a lot of people run 14-inch on these cars, but we're going to go 15. The entire body is going to be, I don't know the English term for it, but it's going to be ice blasted. So we're going to get all of the paint and rust off it. I'm going to introduce the ones who are helping us with that later. That's going to be a huge improvement of getting to see the bare metal and see how the car is doing underneath all of the paint. But as I told you, overall it looks very good. Even the doors are solid, so that's pretty good. So I think that's pretty much it in short terms. We're going to go over all of the small steps during the build process, and as I told you, some of the things has already been released on the social media pages of ours. So make sure you follow us on Instagram at Stångberg and Facebook at Team Lovetap. So also make sure you share this episode. Let us know if there's something we missed out in the comments, and hopefully you will enjoy this build series as much as I will do. So have a good one. Bye bye.